Welcome to Beyond the Card, a series that explores the lives of librarians, library patrons, and everyone who walks through that door. Get ready to open the book on the story of our lives. Welcome to Beyond the Card, a series that explores the lives of librarians, library patrons, and everyone who walks through that door. Get ready to open the book on the story of our lives. Today with me, I have
Richard Barlow. I'm a local actor and creator.
Welcome, Richard, to our talks. One of the reasons I wanted to come and ask you to do this interview is mainly because we have asked you to promote or take part in some of our library programs as a host, as someone who is a local content creator and someone who creates cool things that have to do with the materials that are in our library. Very specifically movies for you instead of books. But I know you've done a ton of cool things where you've done like trailer park episodes that had to do with like literacy or current events or things that had to pertain to things like that. So today we're just going to be talking about your experience with the library. And one of the first questions I have for you today is, why do you think libraries are important?
I think it's like the programs that they offer, like most people probably when they think library, they think that's a place where you go and get books. But for me, my whole life, it's been way more than that. Like when I was a kid, I did different library programs and I remember like loving them so much. We did this, like the one that stands out to me is I did like a recycling program in the library where I grew up as a kid. And we like made and like kind of invented new ways to recycle around our community. So I thought that was so cool. And then like, seeing what you do and like the Sudbury Library, all the programs that they have, not just for kids, but for adults. It's like, there's so much offered that like, almost, I shouldn't say anything you can think of, but like just so many different, whatever your interest is, chances are the library will have a way for you to do that.
No, for sure. And I think you're right in saying that we don't offer everything, and that is partly because of, budget or what have you, time, preparation, even maximum capacity type stuff. So there are a lot of things that we try out, and sometimes they grow bigger than what we are able to kind of facilitate. If you take GraphicCon, for example, like that is an event that was created through the library and was created to on a small scale at first, and then it moved into such a thing that housing it in a library or housing it in a space that was free of charge was like not attainable. So I think we like to think big, and we do like to try to provide those things, but sometimes it just, it's out of our hands. But I think if you look at our programming department, every single person in our programming department has something different to bring to the table, has different interests and different hobbies and different ways that they express themselves throughout life. So there is quite a variety of different programs. And then we bring in people who facilitate programs that we're unable to facilitate or we feel would be left in better hands. And so we always try to reach out to the community, and we're always reaching out to the community to aid us in our programming department. So talking about kind of how that recycling program is kind of something you always think back on, how would you say the library has impacted you?
Well, like if we're going back to the recycling one, I forget exactly what the program was. I remember we spent a lot of time on like recycling and making, even before I really knew exactly what it was, kind of like making your footstep a little, or your footprint a little smaller. And but I remember in that one we also talked about other like pretty core values of life, um, but in a fun way, like with the recycling thing. Like I said, we got to invent things. So I made this like robot that would walk around the neighborhood and like suck up things and recycle it into something else. It wasn't realistic. I made it out of cardboard, but it was fun. It got my imagination going. It allowed me to create, which obviously I have kept doing. Um, but kind of like this program, one taught us like I said, core values. Um, but because it gave us this fun way and this like kind of um, place where we could explore our creativity, obviously that stood out to me because I've kept creating over my life. And I feel like as a kid, because it wasn't anything that my school was ever doing. So I feel like as a kid, if I didn't have that program that really like let me showcase my creativity, like who knows if I really would have, you know, gone on the same path or like really found that I love creating so much. So that I think that program really had a big impact on me there.
Again, talking about kind of the significance of libraries and what they do for you in terms of having those earliest memories at the library. Can you think of another time where you had a similar experience? So earliest library memories.
Um, yeah, other than that program, I know they used to have at the library in my hometown, just readings. Like I would go as a kid, and they would have a special guest reading, you know, whatever book they chose that week. Um, and so it was just, it also like as a kid got to introduce me to a lot of different kind of children's literature, as well as you know, these people who were reading the books, they were storytellers. So I got to experience storytellers at a young age because of the library. So that's one of my earliest memories too, is just going and listening to these stories told. I don't remember if it was weekly or monthly or how often I would go, but I do remember, you know, getting to hear, you know, the book of the day when I'd go, and that was always really fun, and I loved it.
Yeah, we've kind of continued a story time within our library system. It's something that we really enjoy, and we always use story time as a weekly learner. We usually take like a different topic and then center a bunch of books around that. And then we kind of read and do an activity with the kids every week in all of our 13 branches. And for someone like you and for someone like me, I think, who very much enjoy storytelling in many capacities, in books, in movies, in television shows, in games, having those kind of early memories of falling in love with stories that other people were reading to you or listening to them is something that holds an impact that you might not necessarily like focus on as something that has impacted you, but it's definitely something that like has changed how you might feel about it. Because story time for little kids is different for all of them. Some of them absolutely love it, but some of them can't wait to get to the activity. So like there's always like a story time, I think, shapes people in different ways. So I think you're right in talking about story time as someone who's a creative and someone who enjoys writing their own stories and creating their own worlds. It's something that is great to look into, something that is, um, I don't know, hearing other stories from other people is always a great way to learn more about the world.
Yeah, for sure. Like who, obviously, like you said, I probably at the time and even still didn't really realize how much it was impacting me. Um, but obviously, if I had that as a kid, something that I loved, you know, love going and hearing storytellers tell different stories, and like the kind of however they would do it, whether they do different voices or however they like brought that story to life. Obviously, if I loved it as a kid and then became a storyteller myself, whether I'm really realizing the impact that that exact thing had, obviously it did, because I don't think without having a good place to be told stories as a kid, I probably wouldn't have grown up to become a storyteller. So yeah, it's definitely really important to have stories and programs for kids.
And when you think about kind of moving on to the next question in our podcasts here, when you think about those stories, when you think about things that you've enjoyed, is there a material that you have checked out at the library that holds a significance to you? A book, a movie, or a 3D object is kind of what we like to focus on here on the podcast, mainly because we don't only offer books and movies, we also offer 3D objects like puzzles and games and things like that, fishing gear. And I think a lot of people are just new to the idea of libraries offering things that are not books or movies.
Yeah, I think like I can't think of like a specific object that like I checked out that has like any kind of significance to me. But the one thing that kind of overall has like a significance to me is just the fact that it's another place to because like I said before, like everyone thinks of libraries as a place where you can get books. For me, for a while, I forgot that you could get movies there. Um, and the significance of that is obviously, I host a movie review show. Movies are huge to me. And when I got laid off, I, financially didn't know what I was going to do. I didn't have access to movies. So it just the fact that I could have this place where I could go get movies. Um, and I have my library card. I don't have to pay for those movies. Obviously, if I'm late returning them, there's a bit of a charge. But so I don't think it's not really the answer to your question, because there isn't one thing that really like stands out as having significance. It's just that the library kind of still allowed me to do something I love, which is watching movies during a time when I thought maybe I couldn't because of my financial situation. So that overall kind of has significance.
But I think that's an important thing to touch on, right? Is that, and we talk about this a lot in these podcasts, about how the library does allow people access to information, access to entertainment, access to whatever have you, despite challenges and despite where you are financially, where you are in your life, and allows you that accessibility. There's always a chance for you to kind of be able to do this. So while you don't have one object that is of significance to you, the fact that movies mean so much to you and you're still allowed to access new movies and view new movies free of charge and see them and enjoy them and be able to still continue something you love and enjoy, your review show, for example, through a different kind of means and feel secure financially, is something that I think is really important within our community and within libraries, is that everybody gets to have that access to those things. Everybody gets to partake in the library, and everybody gets to be able to take out something of significance to them, be it movies or books, or look for information that might help them where they're at. And I very often think that some of us don't think we'll ever need it, right? Like I'm sure you're someone who looked at yourself and didn't think like, well, now I'm out of a job, like I can't go see movies every week. But it happens and life happens, and the library is a place where you should be able to feel comfortable enough to still be able to do the things you love. And I think that's an important thing to touch on, is that you can still do things you enjoy through the library, be it even programs. We talk very often about how programs that are offered allow people the chance to experience something that they might have otherwise been afraid to or financially couldn't commit to. Dance classes, for example. Adult dance classes are hard to find and hard to commit to when you feel nervous about not being a dancer. And so I know that we have like a bunch of programs at our library that allow people to join a dance class, and they don't need to be experienced, they just need to be interested. And so I think you kind of touch nicely on a significance that the library holds for you despite it not being a physical object.
Yeah, and I think too, like more on that point, like it's not like when like the dance classes and stuff like that, and also for some movies, it's not even that you necessarily like have to look at it as it's good for people in financial hardships. It's just good because, like, you know, let's say I sign up for a dance class, um I do it and I realize, yeah, no, this is not for me. I do
Yeah,
not
yeah.
enjoy dancing. That I didn't put money, whether even if I'm rich, it still sucks to pay for something that you then don't enjoy. So it gives you the opportunity to it's kind of it's a no risk thing that you're
Yes.
doing. And same with me, like, you know, I host a movie review show, so I have to watch a lot of movies. Some of them are really bad. So if I could get that without paying for it and not have to say I just wasted my money on this movie that was awful, then that's perfect. You know, because yeah, just like I said before, like just doing things with zero risk really
Yeah,
just makes it all the better.
I definitely I've spoken about it to a few of my higher ups and stuff too, is that like that's a major influence for the community, because I know a lot of the community wants to support local, wants to support people doing what they are doing, and that's wonderful. um, it's just sometimes that uncertainty stops people from doing it, and that uncertainty of wanting to financially commit to something, be it a dance class or a Zumba class or a whatever, because they're not sure if they will enjoy it. There's that like non-risk factor of joining a free library program that allows you to try it out once, and then you go, oh, I really actually like salsa dancing, so I'll look further into it, and it's not as scary as I thought it was, and or I really enjoy it, or the opposite of that, I didn't enjoy it at all, but now I have 6 months of salsa classes. So you kind of get to try things out risk free, and I think um, that's always something too. And I think when we, as adults specifically, and not as children, because I think the children programs are open to new things, and learning as a kid has no um what's the word I'm looking for, scrutiny maybe, like we never judge children for wanting to learn new things or try out new things, but for some reason when we turn into adults, there's an expectation that you already know said thing, but not everyone knows everything. So the expectation that you need to know something before you want to further educate yourself on it is kind of removed as well. um because that's always the scariest things for me as someone who never, I keep bringing up dance because I feel like when I was young, I enjoyed musicals, and I enjoyed theater, and I enjoyed musical theater, and a big part of that was needing to know how to dance. But you know, I didn't come from a very wealthy family. I didn't have a lot of extracurricular activities. I lived in a very small neighborhood, and I never took a dance class. But by the time I got to be a teenager, taking a dance class while you're a teenager means you already know how to dance. And so I, when I started getting into the library system, I realized that there were places that had spaces for people like me who didn't know how to do that yet, and allowed me to have those freedoms to learn something new. And so I think it's important that we talk about the significance of being able to do something non-committally, uh, and not specifically an item, because I think you're right, is that it allows you that flexibility.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's also, you know, with it being free and with it being a library, like there are some that you register for, there are some that are drop-ins, but because it's free, you can, like I said, like if I joined a dance class, and it didn't
We should
take
just
me.
go get back to dance all the time.
Yeah,
What we're
it's
saying
like,
is someone out there teach Richard and I how to
yeah.
dance.
What? Yeah, that's this the entire point of this podcast is I need to know how to dance.
Yeah, someone
Um,
please
but
reach out.
but no, like let's say I signed up for a dance class, and like it took me 10 minutes to realize, yeah, no, this isn't for me. Then again, because there isn't money in it, there's no shame in me being like, okay, I'm done. Uh,
You know what? Step two,
yeah,
not for me.
yeah. Um, but then also, or the opposite, like you can try multiple times for free, because like who knows? Again, with dancing, I don't know if I can dance. Um, so like if I take one class, I don't think after that one class that I'd be ready to start paying. So like take another one for free if it's offered. And just really, you really, because again, with that no risk, you really can take your time to figure out if it is for you or
And
not.
build up that like kind of confidence too,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, because doing one class at the library, I'm not then joining some top dance class and being like, yeah, I'm equal to these people.
Ready for Juilliard.
Yeah. But maybe I am. Maybe I'm a natural. So if someone could just teach me, it could equal amazing things.
Yeah. It's the significance of learning your potential at the library. That's our new
Yes.
tagline.
Yeah.
All right. As we continue to talk about libraries and the space that the libraries use, maybe we can find a dance studio, because the next thing we're going to talk about is libraries have went from a quiet space to a study to more of a community space. Do you think that the library has room to evolve, and where do you see the library going in the future?
Um, yeah, I could see it evolving. To Obviously not every library would be able to do this. Um, but just to bigger spaces, so that you can have um, different areas for different things, because obviously some activities are going to be loud, but the library is still a place for people to come and check out a book and study and do stuff. So like you don't want this big distraction, but then you have things like when we have our Dungeon and Dragon nights at the library, sometimes
They get
when
loud.
you're fighting a dragon, it can get pretty noisy.
True.
So like I think there are a lot of good spaces. Like we do normally have a separate area at the library on those nights, but as that program grows, obviously
And it has,
we
right?
need,
Like,
and it has, yeah, we had to move out of the room that we started in, and now we're kind of in the main area where yes, we could, some people might want a quieter area, but we're then in that fighting that dragon. um and so we can be noisy. So I think, yeah, the libraries could evolve to the ones that could do it. Like I think the potential is limitless. Like you could get, like, let's say the library took over um once the arena moves from downtown. I feel like the library could easily go into that space and fill it with different programs, different things. Like I think, like I said, it's kind of limitless with what the library could do. So the more space that they take up, I think they have things that could fill it.
and we've talked about it earlier in this conversation, right? Is that sometimes we create things. Graphicon is a prime example. Not to toot my own horn, but I think Dungeons and Dragons is a prime example of that as well. Are programs that weren't necessarily something that we thought would pull wide audiences participation, I think is the word I'm looking for, but pulled people in to want to partake in whatever we were doing. And we have ideas like that just sometimes we have to put on the back burner because they're things that we know that there is potential that we can't house it. So we have big ideas, and then sometimes we just go kind of, okay, but maybe later, maybe we can do that when we can book something that is a larger space. And it happens in our conversations quite a bit. And I think you're right, is that we're limited to the space we do have, and that without the space, or I guess in this case, through someone who works through the library, without those community partnerships who allow us those spaces that we can move into, i.e. with Science North when we first did GraphicCon and the arena and stuff like that, then those bigger ideas get scaled back, or they get capped, which is not something we also like to do, because we like to see people come out to our programs, and we like to see people come out and participate in what the library has to offer. And D&D is a prime example of that. There's only so much that we can do, and there's only so much I can do by myself without volunteers to facilitate the program. And we wanted to build a space for people who were interested in playing the game, who might have never played the game or felt uncomfortable playing the game, an open and welcome space for them to do so. We're always looking for new DMs, because at present there's only 2 of us, and I think more than 25 people show up like at all times. So like it's hard to do that when you want to be able to facilitate a bigger program and a bigger event. It's just like space, right? We are in visible eye of everyone, and unfortunately we do sometimes get a bit rowdy or get a bit noisy. The library is no longer a space that we would call a quiet space. It's more of a community space. And there are specific locations within the library that we do allow for that quiet space. But voices travel, I get that. If you're downstairs at the Mackenzie Library, no doubt you can hear someone talking about how much they want to chop a dragon's head off. Like, I get it. And if you were trying to like get out of your noisy house to move into another space, I understand that as well, right? You want to get away from that, and you come to a bunch of rowdy adults speaking very loudly. I get it. So I think I agree with you, is that I think owning a space that is larger creates limitless possibilities, right?
Yeah, and like I could understand if someone said, like, you know, when I threw the idea out there, if the library took over the arena, I think that would be good. I would totally understand someone be like, you're crazy, why would a library need all that space? But like, it does, because I mean, just if D&D keeps growing, we're already pretty much outgrowing that library. So
and
bigger,
it's our largest library, so
yeah. Um, so like that could easily fill it. And then yeah, it just like, and like you said, the ideas just get bigger when you have a bigger space. Um, so
and
yeah.
I can get people not understanding that the library might need a space as large as the arena. and and while I agree with you that we could easily fill that space with programs and collections, and that's the thing too, right, is that our collection is limited by the capacity of books that we can hold within our shelves. So that also changes that aspect. It allows us to grow our collection. It allows us to um, keep some books that we realize sometimes people once in a blue moon will ask for. Like, someone will be like, hey, do you have this book? And we're like, no one has taken it out for 5 years. So we decided to make room for other books that we knew people would want and that were in high demand. But it happens every once in a while that there is something that we have all read that we do not own, right?
Hmm.
If your school offers um, a certain type of literature that you want to read, and uh, more of the, like, I guess, classic titles, and I say that lightly, but um, some of the earlier literature that we spend time in English class learning about, we very often don't have copies of those because they're out of print, or they're um, were in bad condition and no one asked for them. So like it just happens. But with that space, it would be better for us to have those books. And it's really just a term of space, which is weird. I think you're the first person in this podcast to bring up spacing and evolving in terms of space. And there have been a number of ideas presented that I think are interesting for libraries, and the ability to partake in some of those things. Ow. I don't know if you heard that. But yeah, I think to evolve in terms of spatial, what am I trying to get out here? In terms of space is an interesting evolution, because we do have, again, not even just speaking to my own programs that I know I would like to run and I would like to grow and become larger and need more space to fulfill, but even some of our community-led programs like our open mic nights or our keys to the library would benefit from just like a larger participation place, right? And would be able to host those things, and music specifically would sound so much more pleasing to the ear than in our small space in our library. So
Exactly. And you're also like, for music, it then would kind of graduate from being, you know, you're playing in this small space, you're playing in the library, to like you're playing a pretty big crowd.
yeah,
So like, you know, with that comes more people wanting to be involved in it. And so like, I just think getting a bigger space is like one small evolution that could just like lead to so much more.
the potential,
Yeah,
the spacing, even just arrangement of the space, right? Like usage of the space, and adding those specific things. Because I think even with the makerspace, if you think about it in terms of it growing and in terms of it being established in our Mackenzie library, a lot of people don't come out to the Mackenzie Library, and having a makerspace in some of the bigger branches would also benefit those branches. And it was like, it had such a great thought process and what it wanted to be, even having like that sound room that it wanted to create. And so many people are inquisitive about it and want to know more about ways the library has evolved and spaces that they can use in order to partake in the world that we know today, i.e. streaming, podcasts, stuff like that, right? That stuff is expensive, and you and I know firsthand when it comes to that it's not easily accessible for someone who might just want to start out. And to have the ability to go into the library and be able to use that kind of equipment as well is just another way for us to help our community and what it wants to get out there.
yeah, like that equipment is, you know, to just anyone, like that's a, like you said, it's expensive equipment.
Mm.
There is no one's thinking of doing a podcast that just has like hundreds of dollars to throw out on the equipment. So just that alone, that's available to people is incredible.
Yeah. Wow. You know what? I liked our talk because I think it's been a different take. A lot of the talks we, not that everyone else's talks about evolving libraries has, it's just, I feel like this is a different way of thinking about it. I really hadn't thought of space in terms of how limiting space can be in a library sense, and things we do because of the limited space we do have. And everyone else has brought up valid points about library evolution and where they think it's going, and the technology that we will eventually use and what the spaces will be used for and how good they are community based. But it's a nice perspective to see it as an architectural standpoint, right? To look
Yeah,
into a different way of seeing how the library can evolve and actually structurally evolve.
yeah, yeah, because like every other way, I don't know exactly what everyone else said in terms of evolving, but I'm sure a lot of those ways could benefit from a
from the
bigger
yeah
space.
100%. And it's been a lot of talk about being able to offer programs and offering more programs, and just kind of, I think one of the things too is we've talked about how lately we've kind of had to evolve and shift our programming department onto the online sphere and have an online community. And even that has just become like a new way for the library to kind of reach out to our patronage and have them be part of the library in a time that they might not necessarily be able to enter the building. Um, but providing those spaces in a building for them always gives them a sense of community. And I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Richard, for coming to hang out with me on Beyond the Card.
Thanks for having me.
We will see you next time.
Bye.